Major support for these programs is provided by Bank of America Merrill Lynch and Perfect Building Maintenance, New York Community Bank, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, M&T Bank, Chase Commercial Term Lending. Additional support is provided by AVR Realty Company, LLC, Bingham McCutcheon, LLP, Briarwood Organization, Bruce Mosler, Capital One Bank, Cassidy Turley, C.B. Richard Ellis, Chelsea Lighting, Cushman and Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, DDG Partners, Hal Fetner, Durst Fetner Residential, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, LLC, Genova Burns and Gian Tomasi, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Corman Communities, Madison Realty Capital, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Massey Knakal Realty Services, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Site Comply, Sterling and Sterling, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, the Wickoff Group, Urban American, and Ackman Ziff Real Estate, Ariel Property Advisors, Eastern Consolidated, Essex Capital Partners, Goldman Properties, Moynihan Group, Muss Development, RAL Development Services, the Spandrel Group, LLC, Rosewood Realty Group, Triangle Equities.
The West Side has a lot of development. I mean, the West Side from 6th Avenue going in the 30s and the 50s, there's lots of development, a lot of sites. So what's really happening? I've brought together today 4 individuals who are really on that market, who know what's happening in development on the West Side. My guests today include Bruce Mosler, who is the chairman of global brokerage for Cushman & Wakefield, Hal Fetner, who is the president and CEO of Durst Fetner Residential, Jeremiah Larkin, who's the Senior Vice President at Brookfield Office Properties. And last but not least, as I proverbially call him, the statistician, my good friend Bob Knakal, who is the Chairman of Massey Knakal Realty. So, Hal, you went to the West Side really before most people with the property on the Chesapeake on Victory on 42nd Street, and then the Epic. I mean, those were really at the beginning. But the West Side has changed, and now you're doing, what are you doing on 6th Avenue?
We recently acquired a site about a year ago on 30th and 6th, which had gone through a process with a previous developer who ultimately couldn't bring it to fruition, the deal to fruition. We are going to be building a 520,000 square foot building that's a mixed use building. There's about 150,000 square feet on the base of the building that has to be something other than residential, with about 330,000 square feet of residential above.
And you're going to be putting a hotel there?
We are.
Tentatively, perhaps?
It's been reported. We've been talking to a hotel operator. We're also looking at office. We've been approached by an office user as well, and with a retail base.
And you have a retail base, and I mean, the retail over there is one of the best retailers in the city, in that market. You, Mr. Mosler, your office is, on the west, but not in that market. You're on
but close enough.
6. Okay. You're representing this small little Canadian operation, right? So maybe I should propose the question to Jeremiah. What is Brookfield planning to do over here on 9th Avenue?
Well, we own a 5-acre site between 33rd and 31st Street, 1 block away from Penn Station, and we're in the process of getting started on construction of a platform there to ultimately build a 5.4 million square foot complex of either 2, 3, or even 4 buildings.
All office?
All office.
Will you have some retail component of?
There will be a small retail component, but we're mostly focusing on office.
And when, how long will it take you to build the platform?
Platform's going to take between 24 and 30 months, and we're in the process now of finalizing our plans with Amtrak, and we'll probably start work before June.
You know, before I get to Bob talking about sites, everything over there, I mean, the convenience of being, you know, a block from Penn Station, and also have the convenience of being near the Port Authority is an unbelievable situation. I mean, the Hudson Yards, when it's done, which is further, is really further away. I mean, this is really convenience. I remember, I'll age myself, many, many years ago, I worked for a company was called Hartfield Zodi's, and we were in 441 9th Avenue. And 9th Avenue and 34th Street, a number of years ago, was not a neighborhood. I mean, you know, you had the Big Boy Hero place and you had some Italian restaurants, but it wasn't a neighborhood. I mean, 9th Avenue has really changed now, and that's, you know, B&H Photos over there, and you're really in a market over there. Question, how is the office market right now over there on 9th Avenue, those couple of buildings over there between 8th and 9th Avenue?
Well, I think the West Side market has been the hottest market in New York City for the past decade. If you want to look at where tenants have gravitated from, it's been east to west, because that's where they can get those big floor plates. Part of the distinguishing feature of what we're designing is at the podium, and we have flexibility in how we design. We can build up to 90,000 square foot floor plates. In the towers, we're talking about more traditional 35,000 square foot plates, but we're talking column free with all the efficiencies that go with it, with brand new infrastructure, LEED certified. So these are the kind of things that tenants want today, and why they've gravitated west is because you can't get that kind of efficient space.
Now, when you talk about construction like that, and then I'll get to Bob, Hal and Douglas have always been energy efficient, LEED certification. I mean, you know, with all of their properties, I mean, you know, the Helena, the Epic, and, you know, all of this situation. And that is important, and tenants really like that, right, in the residential?
You know what? Yes, tenants like it. We always refer to it as the tipping point. Very rarely do we have somebody who will come in and simply say, I'm here because it's a green building. And they generally will come in with brochures from the other buildings as well. But when they learn that they're breathing cleaner air in our buildings, and that there's no off-gassing of formaldehyde from our kitchen cabinets or glues used on the carpeting, that is the tipping point, that they're like, I'd rather live here because I'm the clean water. But we generally do not have people come solely because it's green.
But I will say, from an office standpoint of view, you know, all of the major companies that we deal with are, you know, sustainability is a big thing. It's in every proposal, it's in every request, and this building will be LEED Gold, and with the cooperation of tenant, our buildings will be LEED Platinum. And I think Brookfield, if you check all of our buildings, is a leader, worldwide leader in green, sustainable buildings.
And you have to applaud that. You have to applaud that for everyone, Brookfield, Durst, other developers who are actually taking now the initiative in doing it, because it is for the tenants or the residents, but it really is also for the greater community.
There's no question. So, Bobby, how much business and how much development sites have you seen over the last 2 years? Because as Bruce, we were talking before about the change, we were talking about rents and everything else, the market really changed. Is there a pent-up demand for all of the West Side sites that you've been selling that have been on the market?
Well, it clearly has been, Michael, and I think you know, Bruce mentioned that the West Side has seen tremendous demand, and tenants are moving west. And I think I recall that started really back in the 80s when Broadway and 8th Avenue were rezoned. And you know, large floor plates are very efficient as opposed to a tenant being on multiple floors, and you can get those large floor plates as you go west. So I think city planning and zoning changes really have directed and dictated where this new development is going to occur.
But we've seen, you know, especially, you know, with TF Cornerstone on the residential and with Lenny Litwin and Glenwood, we have seen a number of new apartment houses, you know, being built on the West 37th Street, West 38th Street, you know, over there, and as far off as 11th Avenue. What are you seeing, and who's looking? Who are the buyers? What are they trying to? What are the sites being used for, and what's the prices like?
Well, it really depends on where you are over on the west side. In the yards, the zoning was changed primarily to promote commercial development. So most of the base FARs are 100% commercial, and you can buy district improvement bonuses and Eastern Rail Yard rights to get those FARs up from 10 to 21.6 in some cases. In the super district, you can get the FAR up to 33. And those sites can have a small residential component, but primarily today, those sites are being looked at by hotel operators or developers who will have a hotel component and then a residential component that will be afforded hotel services. There are some zoning districts which allow 100% residential in the 400 block, for instance. That's between 9th and 10th Avenue. There are some fully residential sites. In fact, we sold a site in the 400 block on 37th Street to
400 between 9th and 10th is what
9th
you're
and
saying.
10th,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Jackson Development is just completing a development there on a site that we sold them. But the demand is really coming from all sectors. It's coming from residential developers who obviously would like to maximize the residential component of the site. And there are commercial developers that are starting to look. We had on a site that we're selling at the southeast corner of 38th and 11th, we have a commercial developer that has an office user that he's working with, that he may do a build-to-suit building for users there.
So here's the question. How much is the land? And I'll try to get an idea, because then we can figure out how much the office space and everything else. How much would that land on 38th and 11th sell for per FAR, per developable foot?
Well, because it's on the avenue, it would command a premium over mid-block sites. It could be anywhere in the mid 2s to 300 a foot.
Fine.
Mid-block is probably below
Or
200
north
a
if
foot.
it's, you know.
Or
Fine,
north,
but
depending
no,
on
but
where it
what
is exactly.
I'm very happy that I have a builder here, and I have guys who lease and operate a building. So if the base cost for the land is, let's say, $250, an office building, how much would it cost at a minimum to construct that space?
An office building.
An office, because I'm taking his office discussion, right?
You know what? I personally don't want to opine to the office. 'cause
No,
that
but
really
but
scares
you
me.
know the
You know what? We're doing it right now. The real challenge for a residential developer is exactly as Bob, excuse me, identified it. We're residential, and so figuring out how to do a base with something other than residential is the greatest challenge. And you have, you mentioned Lenny Litwin, all right? We spend a lot of time with Glenwood talking about exactly this issue because they don't like doing anything other than residential. We don't either. But, you have to reinvent it if you're going to play in the far west side. And we strongly believe in this market, whether it be Brookfields or Hudson Yards, and we want to build residential there, we have to reinvent ourselves to figure out what we're going to do.
Explain to my audience, what do you mean you have to build, re-engineer, okay? You can build residential, is what Bob just said, but you also need this commercial component.
Commercial component of anything, basically, is very broad zoning other than residential. It could be hotel, it could be office use, it could be, I think in some cases, entertainment space.
It could be a community facility space. It could be healthcare.
It could
I
be.
mean, there were discussion, and I don't know how easy it would be. In Princeton, New Jersey, there's a proton X-ray coming in, and they were talking about the hospitals jointly coming in and building a proton X-ray, which is a very highly sophisticated system for cancer work, that you can build that on the lower level and then, build a tower.
But there's a balance with that, and we to be very
I know,
candid,
especially
we
what you
spoke
did.
to we spoke to Proton, but the balance is, what about the marketability of my residential? Will they perceive living above a Proton facility, as being something good or bad? And so you have to weigh the balances of the use below, and it hopefully complements the use. So residential
But
hotel.
here's an interesting thing, and I mean, especially since all of us have been around over a number of years, and we've seen the redevelopment of Times Square, and we've seen the redevelopment of 8th Avenue. I mean, because, when Worldwide built, Worldwide Towers, it wasn't a building over there, so the world has changed. What do you see in your own mind? Brookfield, we know that Brookfield class operators, they're going to build a classy office building. What do you see We know the Yards has a different approach. What do we see happening in that other area from 30th to 42nd Street between 6th to 11th Avenue? I mean, are we going to see, I mean, how many hotels? I mean, because if you want reality, look at the failure of the Javits Center. The hotels near the Javits Center have never done well because they were too far away. There was nothing there. What do you see or foresee happening in that development, Bruce?
Well, let me take one step back because we talked about the gravitation of tenants east to west, and we made the statement that it's largely the only place where you can get these significant floor plates.
There is something called the World Trade Center.
There is something called the World Trade Center, and by the
people
way,
might want to go to New Jersey, where they get certain ratings.
The World Trade Center doesn't have the huge floor plate if you want it.
Number one, they can't build the kind of base podium that we've talked about to accommodate a very large floor plate at the base. But that aside, let me tell you what you can't get in addition. Where Brookfield is building, it's not a single building that's going up on its lonesome. It's not being built in the middle of a crowded block. There's 2.5 acres of public space. So you're sort of going to be part of a community. That's what the West Side sites afford you. Being part of that community means that you can brand your business. That there will be, as Jeremiah alluded to, there'll be several 100,000 feet of retail or concert space or studio space, whatever it turns into, to be a significant attraction for that company or companies. You can't get that kind of building or feel, community feel, by just being a 1 million square foot tenant in a building in Midtown. That's an addition to what the West Side offers. And you mentioned it before, and I don't think we should breeze past this. From a transportation standpoint, it's unique. You're talking about, when you talk about Penn Station, the largest North American hub at the end of the day in terms of total number of passengers that travel through it. You're talking about a 7 line that's going to be built within a block. You're talking about the completion of the High Line that's going to be part of this community that we're talking about. So it's not an area on its lonesome. It has life, it has transportation, and aura.
You bring up an interesting point. Last week I had a whirlwind 24 hours in Florida with a bank, and the person said to me, when we were going back to the airport, he was talking about zip cars. And in reality, in the West Side, because most people do not have their own car because of the limited parking spaces and the high cost of garages, the zip car has worked around. And this person even said to me, because they have an operation in New York City, he said, when we have our people from Florida, we don't even, as opposed to get cabs, we rent the zip car at $10 an hour. So, there are the different situations over there. And look at what has happened with T.F. Cornerstone's property and Lenny Litwin's properties over there on the West Side. I think it's a testament. I mean, when Hal built, the Epic, in the middle of, people wouldn't expect. I mean, it's really been a great property, and it's a different market.
Success.
It's a different market than the property across the street from the Empire State Building. It doesn't have the same feeling. It's you made a community out of that.
Michael, those residential buildings have rented so well. The absorption was probably much quicker than people anticipated, and that naturally is going to bring a very significant retail component to the neighborhood. We recently sold the block front on Broadway between 29th and 30th Street, which ultimately will be a hotel.
2 hotels. John was, I'm doing his life story, came to visit me last week. He's building 2 hotels over there.
But that site will ultimately have a very significant retail component as well. And I think as you get more people living and working in the area, naturally retail is going to be very big.
I mean, if you want to talk about the retail and the hospitality, well, when Alan Gross, and I think it's Dune Capital, took over and made the Ace. I mean, the Ace is doing unbelievable. This is 29th Street over there. This was an SRO. I mean, this is over there, and this is a totally. You have to give a lot of credit to Matt Adele's father, who was really the visionary, on 6th Avenue in the Flower District. You don't see flowers over them all.
Have you gone to the Ace Hotel?
Yes, I've been.
It's an amazing hotel, and I've gone into that lobby a number of times, and I am clearly the oldest person in that lobby, but there's just this vibe.
There's a vibe, and what he also did, and this is part of what you have to do, and you've done this in many of your properties, and Douglas has, is he's made it. He purposely put in, the fish place and the other place over there to make it more of a community situation, and that's what Even though you're going to have limited retail, the way Brookfield is doing right now, revamping the Battery Park City, the World Financial Center. This is what changes the world. Let's get a little bit, to 57th Street, where the Helena, which was truly a visionary situation, and what has gone over there, because the Helena started all of the residential going down there, 10 West End Avenue, and then Barnett's situation, with Extel and everything.
Yeah, I don't know that Helena started it. We piggybacked off of Trump's railroad yards.
I agree, but he had a couple that was a number of blocks away. It was 6 blocks away, but you went over there, and then 10 West End Avenue was built, and then Brack built the building, so there was a lot of things over there.
No, I mean, the Helena has done extremely well. Yeah, 2-3 years ago, when we had a downturn in the market, she still performed very, very well. We saw a 3 to 5% drop in rents, but we're back up to where we were at this point.
So here is the question. We know that Brookfield has made a commitment. We know that Bruce is, very interested in that market, besides for Brookfield, just in general for the West Side business. And we know that Bob is saying, do you see, and this is for both Bob and for you, is the Durst Fetner Group looking for more West Side sites? And who else do you see? And I asked that question first. And your question is, who do you see going in there? Are the established developers? Are we having foreigners? Who's looking for spots?
We are looking. And I wouldn't say we're limiting it to the West Side, but we do like the West Side. But we are actively looking for more sites. We are working with Bob and his firm to identify sites.
Yeah, Michael, we've recently sold 2 sites over there. We have 5 that we're presently in the market with.
Now, who are the buyers?
Right.
And what are they? I think that's really my question. Because we hear and we do know that the REITs were very active, but the residential REITs, as I just heard, they really can't go into this, the equity. I'm not sure that this is equity wants mixed-use sites in that way. Maybe they want a mixed use with Toll Brothers on the property, but I'm not sure that they're going to build residential. Who are the buyers?
Well, interestingly, I would say that probably half of the buyers that are making offers on the sites we presently have on the market are people who already have a presence in the area or are the well-known Manhattan developers. The other half, and 50% is a shockingly high number, are first-time buyers to the Manhattan development market. They're coming from other places in the New York metro area. They've never developed in Manhattan before. They've developed in the other boroughs or outside of New York metro. Other developers from around the country, and a lot of international developers that are looking. And if you look at the way the global economy is these days, if you have a lot of equity somewhere around the world, you probably want to get it out of where you have it.
Redeploy it to safe haven.
But here's an interesting point. Durst Fetner puts their money where their mouth is. They put equity in a deal. I've done plenty of banking shows, as you know. I've done plenty of panels. Banks are looking. They all want to go. They have one situation. We have money for our select client. I can hear my friend Steve Kenny at Bank of America say the following: we lend to establish relationships that we like. They'll give to him. Brookfield they're a public company. They can do both on the bonds. They can do whatever they want. These unestablished guys coming to New York, they could buy the site, but they're not going to get the money, right, Hal?
But I'm not going to say right because I don't know who his clients are.
No, but I'm giving
But right now, and I will only speak for Durst Fetner, we've been able to be successful in getting financing because there is not a lot going on right now, and we do enjoy a good reputation with our banks. Underwriting has become really very hard. So the deals that we did 4 or 5 years ago where we had 80-85% debt, we're now looking at 50, 60 with another 40% equity.
I have to bring up another point which has an effect. It has an effect on everyone sitting here, the taxes. we don't have 421As for construction. I mean, you do via an 80-20 situation, but we don't have that. We have a new office building, taxes are high. Is Brookfield getting any abatements or anything from the city on taxes?
We do have an abatement of 25% for the first 4 years. Then in year 16, it phases down and out. So we're protected for 20 years.
But what about the people that you're selling sites to? Are there abatements? I don't hear abatements.
Not unless somebody qualified for 421A previously by getting footings in the ground, and so they can take advantage of that.
So
but Michael, that's a huge, huge issue. And if you are not able to take advantage of some kind of abatement program, it's very, very tough to build today.
I mean, we've discussed this, Hal and I and everyone, taxes on you can maybe get a rent, if you're lucky, $60 a square foot, but your real estate taxes, if you don't have any tax abatement, can run you $24, right, Hal?
Michael, as Bob just said, this is a huge issue, and it's not just 421A.
No,
And I don't think it's just for development either. It's for
everything.
everything.
It's the
across
way
the
we
board.
it's across the board on how we do tax assessment. You look at the 80-20s where we're given a tax abatement and then it's phased in. But what the city now is doing is the assessments have become so great that when it burns off, the amount of my taxes against my gross is astronomical. Now, we've had conversations with the city, REBNY, and it's a critical issue because you're going to make it to a point where the rental landlord, when our bonds burn off, are going to basically convert the building back to a co-op or a condo, thus losing affordable housing. And so unless the city does something soon, you're going to start seeing a lot of these 80-20s reach maturity.
Besides the 80-20s, Jeremiah was saying before companies moving to Maine, their employees, and our friends, Christie has put in this urban tax credit, the go-go credits. I mean, Pearson, is moving to Jersey, and Panasonic, staying in New Jersey because of this. Our taxes, both on the people who work in the city of New York and people who reside on the company, the businesses are really going to stag and have an effect on our business.
But Michael, let's put it in perspective.
Bruce, I wish we have
Sure.
to go because I would love to continue.
Or another time.
With you, with everybody here, we know it's been another time. I really would like to thank Bruce Mosler, Hal Fetner, Jeremiah Larkin, and the statistician and my good friend Bob Knakal. See you next week.